we're going to pick up the thin 18 gauge or actual 22 gauge wire that we cut earlier. This is not connected to the 4 at all, and we're going to use this as the wrapping wire. And it's going to go around the bottom and the sides, and we can do it any way we want to, but for sake of this demonstration, I forgot to mention that it's a good thing if you use at least 4 main frame wires. I didn't mention that, but I learned that, and I forgot to pass it on to you. But there's a reason why I'm using 4. 4 is a good number. 3, it can get a little flexy when it comes time to wrapping it. 4 binds and holds things in place better. You can go to 5, 6, or 7. Again, and the gauge of the wire or the types of the wrap are optional as well. But now that we've got those 4, we're going to start to put wire around it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of wire. What I do is with the flat nose pliers, I will crimp an end like that so it grabs around the wire that I'm going to wrap. See how that grabs on there like that? It's pretty tight. And you want it to be as tight as possible, but it doesn't have to be perfect. And what we're doing is these parts that are cut off at the very beginning or end, we're going to mark this in our mind as being the inside, or the part that faces the inside of the stone. And the reason for that is because it's a little unsightly to have these half-cut bits facing the outside of the stone so people can see them when they're looking at them. We want it to be inside and only have full wraps on the outside of the stone. So that's what we're going to do with this. Honestly, it can be done many ways, but that's just the way I would prefer to do it. Then so basically, this is kind of getting it started. You take your needle nose pliers or your flat nose pliers, however you like, and grab it. Grab the whole mechanism with the wire that you just cut that you're going to wrap around this, and then start to wrap the wire. This is where it's a little bit kind of funny when you first get started. Kind of wrap tightly. There's no textbook way to wrap it, but I find that as long as you're holding this tightly, okay, you can kind of get nice, uniform, tight wraps, which are, you want them together next to each other, okay? And it doesn't really matter necessarily how many you have. You can have 4, 5, 10, 2. I'm doing a little bit more in this because I want to cover the majority of the bottom of the stone, which is this stone right here. I want to cover most of it, and we'll see why that is in a minute. This is a funny shaped stone. I should have probably used a round stone or an oval stone for this demo. And always be pushing it in. If you have a good set of nails, pushing in the wire, if you have especially a thinner wire, will really help you out to keep things tight. We want to keep things as tight as possible, so every once in a while I'm kind of pushing those in. And it's important, these help to hold it flat. It's important that the main for the frame never really twists like this, where you're setting the wraps. And you can move the pliers if you want to. It might leave a mar, but you can move the wires, move to a different place on the wire where you're a little bit more close to the work, just to make sure that you've got pressure and that those 4 wires are not going to start shifting around on you, because that's important. You don't want to get those 4 wires to bundle. You can't get them to bunch up. They have to stay perfectly flat. That's important. Well, it's important with the example that we're going to be doing today. And I'll just finish that off. So just to give you an idea of what that looks like, and then I'll finish it and then I'll bring it around to the back side. Remember how we started with that half hook on the back side? We're going to finish it on the back side too. We're going to hide that, and we're going to take our cutters and just any place right there, it could be any place, just cut it off. And if you really want to hide it, if it's something that you think might be seen, you really don't want it to be seen, before you cramp it down, you could even file it, making sure that you don't start filing the wires or filing any of the wraps that are on there. You can get this closer to the surface and it'll be flatter to the rock when it finally goes down, when you adhere it to the rock. And basically, when we're done, we'll just take that last crimp and crimp it down. And make sure that first crimp is tight, and crimp it down. Now I've probably gotten a little bit too close to my my tape, but the point is you can also grab the sides and squeeze it together. Just make sure that it's a nice uniform solid looking piece. Once you've stopped the wrap, and cut it on both sides, it's pretty much going to be there. It's not going anywhere. And the longer that you make it, the less likely it'll move at all. If you just make a couple, 3 or 4 or 5 wraps, you can slide it up and down if you need to maneuver it later on. It's really, really easy to maneuver. And then, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to figure out if this is sitting on the stone. Again, we've got the inside marked by where we've laid the first wires, and I'm going to kind of figure out where I want to put the next wrap. And I'm going to put the next wrap someplace around here, or just after this. So I'm going to put the next wrap on the sides around here, and that'll become a little more obvious once we get further into this. This is a very, very thick stone, and there's a reason why I'm using this thick gauge wire, but it'll be a little more obvious. But I want to put the next wrap right around here. So if you want to, and this stone is asymmetrical, you can come back with your Sharpie and mark where you want that to end. And then if you want to, you can even measure out an equal amount of distance on the other side and mark out whereabouts you want that to end. And I try not to mark it too much, because just in case that wire twists around and starts to head towards the front or the outside of the piece, you don't want, it's hard to get off Sharpie marker. You don't want black marks to be stuck on the outside of your finished product. That's the only reason why I mark them on the inside. So keeping in mind, this is the inside. Okay, so back to our reference piece. We just finished the bottom. I'm going to be wrapping it like this, so it finishes like this. And we just wrapped some of the bottom. We're going to start to wrap the sides. This only has 2 wraps on the side, but I'm going to put 4 here and here, and that'll become obvious later. But I'm going to use only about 4 or 5 wraps here to do it. I'm not going to go large with 8 or 10 like I did at the very bottom. The next thing I want you to notice is that I moved the tape. Okay, so the original tape, which we had sitting over here right inside the borders of where we're putting the bottom wrap, I moved those, and again, when I moved them, I just moved them out past where hopefully this little black mark can show up. The little black marks where we marked where we want our next wraps to end. And I moved them outside, and all I did was just to keep that from letting the wire twist, because the wire wants to twist, okay? It just does, unless you have some magic wire or something that I don't know of. Maybe a dead soft wire won't twist. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start kind of where about a few wraps from where I want it to end, and then I'll just do the same thing. Let me get this in here a little bit closer. There we go. It's pretty tight. And then I will grab that. You have to be careful when you do this because you don't want to mar the wire up. I'll grab that and begin my wrap again. So it's going to be the same thing we did at the very bottom. It's going to be, you don't have to worry about twisting it or anything like that. Just make sure that when it touches on the frame, the fore, that you want it to be as tight as you can to the frame. There's all kinds of little hand movement techniques that I'm doing that I've refined over the last few weeks. Again, I didn't say years. I'm kind of brand new at this, and I am not a teacher, and I'm not authorized to do any of this stuff, but watch at your own peril. Again, we're just going to put 4 or 5. And notice sometimes it can be a little out of tune with where you want it, hanging out there a little further or whatnot. You can always grab that and pull it in, and then it will be more flush. And once you've pulled it in and it's where you want it, you can squeeze it down, and it probably won't go anyplace. But we're just going to cut this right here like we did last time on the inside. There we go. And then we're just going to use our pliers. And you can use the flat nose to do this or the needle nose to do this. You just want to, well, in our case, let's file it down a little bit. I always like to file it a little bit just to get it a little closer to the stone. I'm just using technique here, but you don't have to do that. My first one, I did not file at all. And then just squeeze that piece down. So now that's 2. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do the other one over here, and then I'll bring it back to the video when I'm done. Okay, we're back. So I've just made the second wrap. Now we have borders on both sides of the center. They're both going to be around there when we finish it, around there. The next thing we need to do is figure out where we want the next wrap. And when you're wrapping things, by the way, this is going to be truncated to about a 20 or 30 minute video at tops, I hope. But I'm doing a lot of things that save time. My first wrap, which was this one over here, took 4.5 hours, and there was a lot of things I did wrong. And it's just, your hands aren't going to be used to wrapping anything, and this is all going to feel funny. The tools are going to feel funny, the wires are going to feel funny, but you know, I just find that repetition breeds familiarity. Repetition, just doing these things over and over again, even if you're doing them badly, gets your hands used to the pliers, gets the pliers used to the metal, and it just all becomes a little more familiar after you're doing them. So just start making them, and you don't have to be using your best rocks. Like, I'm not using any special rocks here, or the good wire. This is only $6 or $7 right here for a lot of 10 yards. But honestly, in the thinner wire is longer, 15 yards, and it's at the same expense. So artistic wire is coated wire, or it's brass wire. It's made to look like gold. It's a lot cheaper. You can use cheap stuff. You can wrap something like this for about $1.50. So we're not talking about much in materials. And you can practice all you want. You want to avoid marring or extra crimping like I did here and here, because you can kind of see them showing up on the inside here of the finished product. We don't really want any of those things to show up on the outside of the finished product, like there's one right there. You just try to keep those to a minimum. And we're going to figure out where the next wrap is going to go. And what I'm going to do is I'm just simply going to go around this thing to the point where I feel like maybe around here I want to drop my next piece. So I'll go around here. And there's a better way to do this, but I'm not doing it. And I would say right here is the next place that I want to have a wrap. And so what I'll do is I'll throw in a little Sharpie right there. That way I know when I'm over there where I'm going to drop the next one. There's two ways you can do this. Okay, I've done it both ways. The easier way is if you can keep this whole thing straight and don't bend it around here until you're about done to near the top. The second way is you can start to do your bends like where they're really going to go on the rock. You can bend them right around the rock. I mean, there's people that use tools. You can use something like a mandrel, or you can use a pill container to help bend, but they'll form it physically around the rock. That way they know exactly where this thing is going to end up. I mean, I could do that. It's not my favorite technique. And the reason for it is because once you start to bend this around the rock itself, you will sort of have less area to work in. And I'll sort of make this obvious by giving you a demo. If I start to bend this around the rock, this is exactly where this is going to go. I'm going to bend it a little bit more. I'm going to encourage it to go around the rock. And then it's going to be exactly where I need it. Okay? And if I continue to do this, if I continue to bend around the rock is going to form the wire. Okay? It's going to be really good at forming the wire. But the problem is, if I do this on both sides, like if I continue to bend around the other side, it's going to meet in the middle here. And if it does, I'm not going to have any area to make my next wrap. Like I want to make my next wrap right here near the top. Okay? I've marked it. But if I start doing my bends, then it's very hard to make a long piece of wire go in and out between these two sections, which are very close to each other. I have to bend and twist this little piece of wire just to fit it into that spot. If I save these bends for the end, then I have a lot of surface area to work with. I can easily go out here and wrap, and this wire is not getting in the way, or I can wrap over here and this wire is not getting in the way. So that's why I've done it that way. Just want to throw that out. But I'm going to mark the other side of where it's going to go, and then I'm going to throw some tape on the outside of it, like someplace around here. I'm just going to take one of those tapes like we showed earlier. I'm going to throw that on there so that it holds those four together. I don't want any twisting to take place. I want this whole thing to be flat as possible, and that'll help us in the long run. It will really, really help us if it's not twisting. If it's flat the whole way around. Anyway, I'll come back in a moment.